Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to plug in and dive deep into the tone of one of modern rock's most tasteful guitarists, Shinya Ishihara of Saucy Dog. We're going to break down his philosophy, his gear, and most importantly, how you can capture that sound for yourself.
But first, to really get a feel for Ishihara's impact, we've got to start with this wild story from another musician named Tome. It's a tale about a breakup, a karaoke bar, and a grudge, and it really shows you how Saucy Dog's music can just get under your skin.
All right, let's get into this story because it's pretty great. It all starts way back when Tome broke up with his girlfriend in high school. A mutual friend decides he's going to be the hero and get them back together. And his master plan? Taking all three of them to a karaoke bar. Yeah, you can already feel how awkward this is going to be, right? So picture this. Tome's ex cues up the Saucy Dog song Itsuka and says, "Hey, you're in a band. You can sing harmony, right?" Well, he couldn't, but he tried, and it was a total disaster. The memory was so unbelievably cringeworthy that he swore he'd never, ever forget that band. Okay, now fast forward a few years to 2022. Tome's a pro musician now, but he's just had a rough set at a festival, and he's feeling pretty bummed. And then, out of nowhere, Shinya Ishihara himself walks right up to him and just says, "Your set was great," and then walks away. Tome was just floored by this act of kindness. So later that night, he decides to check out Saucy Dog's set, and he's completely blown away. He realized they weren't just some band with a sad song from his past. They were an absolute powerhouse live. You know, that story is the perfect setup for understanding Ishihara's whole approach to guitar and to music. It's not about being flashy, it's about making a real connection and doing what's right for the song. That philosophy is the absolute heart of his sound, this less is more idea that puts emotion above everything else. His entire sound, his whole rig, it's all built on these four key ideas. First and foremost, you serve the song. To do that, he gets his core crunch sound straight from the amplifier. Pedals, they're just there to add a little bit of color, not to create the sound from the ground up. And finally, the tone has to be dynamic. It has to respond to how he's playing, making the guitar feel alive. And this quote right here, it just nails the practical goal of that whole philosophy. He's looking for a very specific kind of drive, one that's got some grit, some hair on it, but doesn't turn into a muddy mess. You can strum a big open chord, and you can still hear every single note. For a band like Saucy Dog, with all their beautiful melodies and chord changes, that clarity is just everything. So how does he get that incredible clarity? Let's start digging into the gear. And we're going to start with the two most important parts of any guitar rig. The guitar, that's the voice, and the amplifier, which you can think of as the lungs. For years, his number one has been a Momo's Telecaster. And that choice is super intentional. Telecasters are famous for being clear and punchy. They're the perfect blank canvas. The single coil pickups give him that classic spanky character you hear all over their songs. But this specific model is known for not being too harsh or ice-picky. It's the perfect starting point. Now let's look at the amp, because this tells a huge part of the story. Early on, he was using a Marshall JCM 900, a total rock and roll machine. But then, around 2018, he switched to a divided by 13 RSA 3.1. This is a massive clue. He went from a high-gain monster to a boutique amp that's famous for its gorgeous clean sounds and its super touch-sensitive breakup, kind of like a vintage Vox AC30. He's letting the amp do the heavy lifting, not a pedal. Okay, so we've got the foundation, a clear guitar into a dynamic amp. Now let's look at how he adds the color, the textures, with his pedal board. This is where he really shapes that core sound to fit each and every song. And the first thing you notice is it's pretty simple. There aren't a million crazy effects here. It's a really focused, purposeful set of tools. It's mostly just different flavors of overdrive and boost, and they're all there for one reason, to push that beautiful divided by 13 amp in just the right way. What's really cool here is his use of gain stacking. See, instead of one pedal that does all the distortion, he uses a few different low-gain pedals together. He might use the OCD for his main rhythm sound, then kick on the Mad Professor for something a little more dynamic. The KCM OD, which is a clone of the legendary Klon pedal, is like a secret sauce. It just makes everything sound bigger and richer without changing the core tone. And for solos, a simple, clean boost like the MXR microamp just makes him louder, so the tone he's already built just shines through. Of course, it's not all about the drive pedals. To get those big atmospheric sounds the band is known for, he uses classics like the Strymon Blue Sky for reverb and a Boss delay. A compressor is super important for smoothing out those clean, arpeggiated parts you hear in the verses. And then there's his secret weapon, the Line 6 M5.
It's basically a Swiss Army knife that can handle any other effect he might need, all without cluttering his board.
Okay, so that's the pro-level rig. But here's the best part about Ishihara's approach. The philosophy behind it is way more important than the specific gear. You do not need a multi-thousand-dollar amp to capture the spirit of his sound.
So let's talk about it. How can you apply these exact same ideas using gear that's a bit more, well, accessible? It's all about finding tools with the right kind of character.
The real key here is to chase the character of the gear, not the brand name. Instead of a boutique Momos, a Squier Classic Vibe or a Fender Player Telecaster will absolutely get you that essential single-coil snap. For that touch-sensitive overdrive, the Boss BD2W is a legend. It's famous for how well it responds to your picking and cleans up with your guitar's volume knob. And you don't need a crazy expensive amp. Modern amp sims like the ones in a Podgo or a Spark have amazing Vox-style models that will get you right in that edge of breakup zone.
So let's just boil it all down. Start with a single-coil guitar, like a Tele or a Strat. Find that magic spot on your amp where it's clean, but it just starts to bite when you dig in with your pick. Then use a low-gain overdrive not to create distortion, but to push your amp into its own natural distortion. And never forget, your hands are the final piece of the puzzle. The difference between a clean verse and a crunchy chorus could just be how hard you're hitting the strings.
When you look at his whole setup, it's just a masterclass in taste. It's about making smart, thoughtful choices. Every single piece of gear has a job to do, and that job is always, always to make the song better. It's such a great reminder that having more gear doesn't mean you'll have better tone.
So maybe the real secret to a great guitar tone isn't about the gear you own, but about how you choose to use the gear you already have. That's the idea right at the heart of the Saucy Dog sound, and it's definitely something to think about the next time you plug in. Thanks for joining us.